For 6 years, I gave everything I had to that company. Late nights, early mornings, missed birthdays, missed anniversaries. Hell, I even took Zoom calls from a hospital bed once, still groggy from surgery. I was the regional operations director for Elevar International. I managed over 200 employees, oversaw supply chain operations across 3 states, and streamlined a system that saved the company over $4 million in 12 months. But apparently, that didn't make me a real leader. I still remember the moment, the way their laughter hung in the air like cologne. We were in the executive lounge after a quarterly performance meeting. I'd just wrapped a successful presentation, and for once I thought maybe I'd earned a seat at the table. "So, the annual exec dinner's on Friday," said Brent, the VP of logistics, loosening his tie like he'd actually done anything that quarter. "Private chef, ocean view, imported wines, the usual." I smiled. "Sounds great. Where should I RSVP?" There was a pause. One beat too long. Brent smirked. "Oh, sorry, Lisa. It's for senior leadership only. You know, the core team. Real decision makers." He said it casually, like it was policy. Like I hadn't just crushed every single KPI they handed me. Across the room, Dana, head of finance, stifled a laugh behind her wine glass. "I'm sure you understand," she added. "We just want to keep it strategic." Strategic. Right. I nodded, lips tight. "Of course." But inside, something cracked. Not in the angry, screaming, flip the table way. It was quieter than that. Colder. Something settled. Because I'd spent 6 years playing the game, working twice as hard, being twice as prepared, taking half the credit. And for what? To be told I wasn't one of them? To be reminded I was still on the outside looking in? Not this time. That night, I went home and canceled my RSVP to the dinner. Then I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and started pulling receipts. Literally. You see, what Brent and Dana didn't realize, or maybe just didn't care about, was that I had access. As regional director, I handled logistics, yes, but that included travel approvals, corporate cards, expense reports, vendor payments. I didn't just see the numbers. I owned the system that processed them. And what I'd seen in the past few months didn't add up. Private charter flights to Napa Valley, luxury suites in Dubai. For client meetings that didn't show up in the CRM. Thousands spent at high-end spas in the Maldives, charged as team building. At first, I thought it was sloppy, arrogant. But as I dug deeper, it was intentional. A pattern, a system, a network of senior executives siphoning money through inflated vendor contracts and fake consulting invoices. All approved, all signed, all documented, by each other. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. A spreadsheet lit up in red, yellow, and green, the colors of corruption. Here's the thing most people forget. When you get left out, you see everything more clearly. Their blind spot? Thinking I'd just take the insult and keep my head down. Instead, I compiled a full report, cross-checked everything against the company's travel policy and federal compliance standards, flagged every violation, every suspicious signature, every transaction that reeked of fraud. Then I created a secure email. No name, no trace. Attached the files, typed just one line in the body. "If you're serious about ethics, you'll want to look into this." And I sent it. To internal audit, to compliance, and directly to the board of directors. Then I closed the laptop and waited. The next few days were normal, on the surface. Brent still strolled around like he was untouchable. Dana still wore those $1,000 heels and handed out fake compliments like candy. But the storm was already brewing. I saw the signs first. Subtle things, meetings disappearing from calendars, compliance officers quietly flying into headquarters, the IT department suddenly working weekends. And then, on Monday morning, it hit. A company-wide memo, unscheduled. Subject line, Urgent leadership review underway. By Wednesday, Brent was suspended pending investigation. Dana went on personal leave. 3 more senior execs disappeared from the org chart within 48 hours. And the executive dinner? Canceled. The memo didn't say why, but it didn't need to. I already knew. Because when you treat people like outsiders, when you use power to exclude and manipulate, eventually someone fights back. Quietly. Efficiently. Like I did. They told me I wasn't a real leader, but leaders don't need lavish dinners or luxury retreats to prove their worth. Real leaders see the rot and remove it, even if it means burning the whole table down. The thing no one tells you about revenge? It's not the moment it hits. It's the silence that follows. The emails stop. The hallway chatter dies. People look at you just a little too long, but say a little too little. And you start to feel it, the weight of something shifting underneath your feet. By Thursday morning, it was no longer a rumor. Brent's nameplate had been removed from his office. Dana's car wasn't in the executive parking lot. 4 other directors, all part of the inner circle, were suddenly unavailable for comment. The exec floor was different. It used to buzz with false confidence, backslapping, wine-fueled banter. Now, it was like a courtroom before a verdict. Still, no one said anything to me. Not yet. I kept showing up, doing my job, saying little, watching everything. But then something happened I didn't expect. On Friday morning, I got an email with the subject line, Private Invitation Ethics Review Interview. Attached. A time slot. 3:30 p.m. Room 7C, Internal Audit. I stared at it for a long time, because I'd sent the anonymous tip. I'd protected my tracks, used a throwaway server, scrubbed the metadata. It shouldn't trace back to me. But here I was, invited. I spent the rest of the day trying to act normal, answering emails, reviewing logistics updates, managing vendors. But my stomach twisted with every tick of the clock. When 3:30 hit, I walked into the audit floor where everything looked sterile. Too clean, like a place built to make people nervous. Room 7C was already open. 2 chairs, 1 long table, no glass, no windows, just a camera in the corner and a pitcher of untouched water. Across the table sat a woman in her 40s, crisp navy blazer, no expression. Her badge read, Andrea West, Corporate Compliance Director. She gestured to the chair opposite her. Ms. Harper, thank you for coming. I sat. Of course. She folded her hands, calm, measured. You've been with Elevar for how long? 6 years, I replied. Director of Regional Operations? Yes. She nodded. Impressive numbers. Your division's metrics have been some of the best this company has seen. I said nothing. I wasn't here to be flattered. She leaned forward slightly. We're conducting a formal investigation into misuse of company funds. I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to answer honestly. Nothing will leave this room without your consent unless it's legally required. Understood? I nodded. She pulled out a thin file, opened it. Then, to my surprise, she smiled, just slightly. Ms. Harper, let me be direct. We already know it was you. I blinked. Excuse me? The anonymous report. The metadata was clean, yes. The timing wasn't. The documents you included were pulled directly from internal routing systems, and most of them had your clearance level. I stared. Andrea continued, unbothered. We cross-referenced submission logs, internal access timestamps, routing IDs. It all leads here. I didn't deny it. I couldn't. So instead, I said the only thing that made sense. Are you here to fire me? Andrea shook her head. No, Lisa. Quite the opposite. She closed the file. What you did took courage, precision, integrity. If even a fraction of what's in your report holds up. And from what we've seen, it does. You didn't just uncover financial fraud. You saved Elevire from potential federal charges. I exhaled. Slowly. She leaned in. But I need to ask you one question. For the record. Pause. Why didn't you come forward openly? I hesitated, then said, because when I wasn't invited to the executive dinner, I realized I wasn't part of their circle. And people outside the circle don't survive calling it out. They disappear. Quietly. Andrea didn't speak for a moment. Then she nodded, slowly. You're right. That's how it's been, but that ends now. She slid a document across the table. Confidential. Internal use only. At the top, executive misconduct and restructuring recommendations. 6 names, all flagged for immediate removal. Effective Monday, she said. The company will begin formal action. But there's one more thing we need. I looked up. She held out a separate folder. Slim, unmarked. This is a transition brief. We want you to step in, temporarily, as acting vice president of operations, to stabilize the department during the fallout. I froze. Me? The woman who wasn't invited to the dinner? I took the folder. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. Andrea stood. We'll support you fully. You just need to decide if you're ready. I stood too. Looked her in the eyes. I've been ready for 6 years. As I walked out of room 7C, the world looked different. The walls, the lights, even the people. They hadn't changed. I had. Because the moment they excluded me, they thought they'd pushed me down. But all they really did was give me the high ground. And I was just getting started. When Monday came, I didn't drive to my usual parking lot. I took the ramp to the executive garage, the one with license plate scanners and valet service. No one stopped me. No one questioned anything. My clearance had already been updated. As I stepped into the private elevator alone, I caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. Same black blazer, same minimalist makeup, same steady eyes. But this wasn't the same Lisa Harper. This Lisa wasn't asking for a seat at the table. She was the table now. When the elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, it was like stepping into a silent battlefield. Desks cleared, offices empty. You could feel the ghosts of the recently removed, Brent, Dana, and their smug little alliance, still hanging in the air. A few heads turned as I walked past, not out of greeting but recognition. Whispers followed me like shadows. She's the one. She's the reason they got fired. Is she the new VP? I didn't stop, didn't flinch, just walked straight into the corner office that used to belong to Brent. The plaque had already been removed. The desk was wiped clean, a blank slate. Fitting. There was a man already seated on the guest couch, older, polished, wearing an Elevare lapel pin that only the board members ever wore. He stood, extended a hand. Gerald Takano, interim board liaison. I shook his hand. Lisa Harper. We've reviewed your report, he said. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it. You didn't just uncover fraud. You traced patterns, followed vendor trails, even projected future liabilities. Do you have a background in forensic auditing? I smiled. Number just a background in being underestimated. He chuckled. Well, it worked in our favor. Then his expression grew serious. You're stepping into chaos. Legal's involved. Finance is bleeding. Half the department heads are either resigning or lawyering up. Morale is in freefall. Can you handle that? I met his gaze. I've been handling it for years, just without the title. He nodded once. Then it's yours. Officially. He handed me a leather-bound folder. Inside, contract, terms, interim vice president of operations. I signed it on the spot. Click. Pen down. Everything changed. By noon, I was in the war room, where just a week ago, I wasn't even invited to meetings. Now, I was running them. A team of 5 department leads sat around the table, stiff and uncertain. I recognized most of them. They were the ones who used to avoid eye contact when Brent snapped his fingers. I started simply. "I know what you're all thinking," I said. "You're wondering how long this lasts, whether this is real, if I'm just a placeholder until the board finds someone safer." No one spoke. "I'm not here to convince you with words," I continued. "I'm here to stabilize the company, to fix what they broke, to clean the blood off the floor and remind everyone that Elevare still has a future." I paused, letting the silence settle. Brent, Dana, and the rest, they built a culture of fear and favoritism. That's over. From now on, no more closed-door clubs, no more real leaders only. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. Still silence. Then one of the leads, Carmen from compliance, slowly nodded. "You've got my vote." "Mine too," someone else added. The others followed. For the first time in days, the room felt alive. We moved fast, re-audited every major vendor, froze all non-essential expenses, launched a transparent reporting system with real-time approvals. By 3 p.m., I'd personally called every major client affected by the scandal. I didn't send them to PR. I didn't read from a script. I spoke like a human being. I apologized. Took ownership. Promised better. And you know what? Most of them stayed. Because when you've been lied to by polished suits and corporate doublespeak, authenticity becomes the most valuable currency in the room. As the sun began to set, I found myself alone in Brent's old office. My office now. I looked out over the skyline. The city lights flickering on one by one. Below me, Elevare kept moving. Calls being made, reports being filed, systems running. The company hadn't collapsed. It had evolved. My phone buzzed. A message from Andrea. DOJ just called. They've opened a formal investigation into Dana and Brent. You were right about everything. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Good. Let me know if they need anything else. I locked the phone and set it aside. Because the real work was just beginning. They tried to exile me. Instead, I became their reckoning. And from this moment forward, no one would forget the name Lisa Harper. 2 weeks. That's how long it took to steady the ship. 2 weeks of 14-hour days, non-stop meetings, back-to-back damage control calls, and enough legal briefings to make my head spin. But we did it. The bleeding slowed. The clients calmed down. The investors? Still cautious, but watching closely. And me? I was no longer the interim anything. The board made it official. I was named Vice President of Operations. No asterisks, no footnotes. The same people who once laughed at me in hallways now greeted me with tight smiles and 2 eager nods. My inbox was suddenly full of congrats messages from colleagues who'd never responded to a single email before. Funny how quickly respect shows up once power enters the room. But the truth? I didn't trust it. Respect that arrives after you win isn't respect. It's self-preservation. And something about the way people moved around me now felt off. Not afraid. Not hostile. Just too careful. Like they were waiting to see if I'd really changed things. Or if I'd just become the new version of the old problem. It was a Friday evening when it all shifted again. Everyone had gone home. The executive floor was dark, quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the glow of city lights beyond the glass walls. I stayed late, catching up on final approvals, sipping cold coffee that had once been hot. That's when I saw the email. No subject, no sender, just one line in the body. Watch your back. Not everyone's happy with your promotion. My chest tightened. Not fear, not exactly. More like alertness, like a cold current under the skin. I checked the metadata, scrubbed clean. No trace. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to cover their steps. I didn't reply. Didn't forward it. I just sat there for a while, staring at the screen. And suddenly, I remembered something Andrea had said during our first meeting. Something about how removing Brent and Dana wouldn't be the end. it would just peel back the next layer. Because when corruption goes that deep, it's never just two people. It's roots, systems, a network, and I just stepped into its spotlight. That night, I drove home slower than usual, watched the mirrors, checked the license plates behind me. Paranoia? Maybe. But paranoia kept people alive in this game. When I got home, I locked every door, pulled the curtains, poured a whiskey I didn't really want, and pulled out the old laptop, the one I'd used to compile the original evidence. Still intact, still encrypted, still secure. I opened it just to be sure. And what I saw made my blood run cold. A folder, one I hadn't created. Whispers inside it, logs, messages, dozens of them, private Slack chats, deleted internal threads, confidential memos forwarded from anonymous accounts. It was a full trail, a digital whisper network of employees, mostly junior staff, assistants, lower-level managers, quietly documenting everything. Expenses, meetings, off-the-record conversations. One message read, "Dana told procurement to bury the fake vendor invoices. They're hiding it in facility ops now." Another, "They said Lisa's getting too loud. That she's useful for now but won't last." And one that stopped me cold. I heard them say she'll either be promoted out or burned out. Their words, not mine. I leaned back, breathing slowly. This wasn't just about me. It never was. Brent and Dana? They were the face. But behind them was an entire culture designed to grind people down, use them up, push them out the moment they stopped being convenient. And I wasn't the only one they'd targeted. I was just the only one who fought back. Until now. Until this. I copied the entire folder, backed it up twice, then sent an encrypted message to Andrea. "We need to talk. I think the rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought." Within minutes, she replied, "I'm coming over." By 9 p.m., she was in my living room, reading through the logs on my kitchen counter, her face turning grayer by the second. "These people aren't just greedy," she muttered. "They're calculated. They've been manipulating internal promotions, vendor contracts, even HR investigations," I nodded. "And if they know I'm onto them, they'll strike first." She looked at me. "So what do you want to do?" I stared out the window. The city was still humming out there, unaware that another war was quietly unfolding inside Elivare's polished glass walls. "What I've always done," I said. "Expose them. All of them." Andrea hesitated. "That'll trigger a second wave, bigger than before." "Then we prepare," I said. Because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reckoning. For every person they silenced, for every career they buried, for every woman they told, "You're not a real leader." This time, they wouldn't see it coming. Monday arrived like thunder. By 9 a.m., every department head had received a formal request from compliance. Submit all vendor contracts and expense reports from the past 12 months. Full transparency, no redactions. No one said it aloud, but the message was clear. Something was happening. Again. And I was at the center of it. The whispers returned. I could feel them trailing me down the hall, slipping between doorways, skimming just beneath fake smiles. She's doing it again. Another sweep? Who does she think she is? But this time, I didn't care, because I wasn't cleaning up after corruption anymore. I was burning it out, root and stem. That morning, Andrea and I presented the Whispers folder to the Internal Risk Committee. The room was ice cold. Everyone knew something serious was coming, but they didn't expect what they saw on the screen. Memos, screenshots, patterns, promotions offered, then revoked. Salaries capped below male counterparts with less experience. Vendor deals rerouted to shell companies owned by executives' relatives. One by one, names appeared. Some I expected, some I didn't. And some were still sitting in that very room. By the time we were done, the silence was deafening. No one moved. No one blinked. Then Gerald Takano, the board liaison, stood slowly. "This company," he said, voice low, "owes you more than an apology, Ms. Harper." I didn't reply. I just opened the next file. The termination recommendations: 7 names, senior executives, mid-tier managers, 1 HR director. One by one, I listed their offenses. Not just financial fraud, but retaliation, harassment, abuse of power. By the end of it, no one questioned the list. They only questioned how it had gone unnoticed for so long. When the meeting ended, Gerald pulled me aside. "Lisa, if you ever want a board seat—" I cut him off. "Not yet. I'm not done building." He nodded, understanding. "Then take what you need. You've earned it." But I didn't go back to my office after that. Instead, I walked down to the second floor, to a department most executives forgot existed: operations support. The people who actually kept Elevare running. I passed rows of cubicles, heads buried in spreadsheets and support queues. Most of them didn't notice me. A few glanced up, puzzled. I stopped at a small desk near the back. The nameplate read, "Jasmine Lin, Logistics Coordinator." She looked up, startled. "VP Harper? Is something wrong?" I smiled. "Number I came to thank you." Her brow furrowed. "For what?" "For the file labeled Whispers." Her eyes widened, lips parted like she might deny it. I raised a hand. "You were smart to stay anonymous, but I know it was you." She said nothing, so I continued. "You saved this company, Jasmine. You kept the receipts when no one else dared. You documented what the rest of them tried to bury. You reminded me I wasn't alone." Tears welled in her eyes, fast and hot. She blinked hard, trying to compose herself. "They said if I spoke up, I'd be blacklisted forever," she whispered. I almost believed them. "They were wrong," I said. I handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, a formal promotion offer, salary bump, relocation options, a guaranteed seat on the internal ethics committee. She stared at it, stunned. "You're not invisible anymore," I said. "You're the new blueprint." I left her like that, speechless, trembling, holding proof that integrity still mattered. By that afternoon, the company buzzed with a different energy. 7 executives were escorted out under quiet HR supervision. No dramatic firings, no finger-pointing, just a clean sweep, swift and undeniable. And me? I sat in the very same boardroom I'd once been denied access to. Not to beg, not to prove myself, but to lead. As the final presentations wrapped, someone leaned over and asked, "Will you be attending the executive retreat this year?" I smiled. "Only if we hold it in the operations center. Let the real heroes see the ocean view for once." Laughter rippled through the room, but not mocking, not smug. Respect? It had taken everything. Every betrayal, every sleepless night, every whispered threat, to get here. But now I was here, and I wasn't going anywhere. Later that week, HR unveiled a new program: Leadership Transparency Initiative, anonymous reporting, equity audits, mandatory ethics training for all managers. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't fix everything overnight. But it was a start, a real one. And as I left the building that Friday evening, I walked past the lobby where it all began, where I once stood invisible, excluded from a dinner that supposedly defined real leadership. Funny. They thought power was found behind mahogany doors and catered banquets. But I learned the truth the hard way. Real leaders don't build empires on silence. They rise in the ashes of those who did. And they make damn sure the next generation never gets told, "You don't belong here." Not on their watch. Not ever again.